My name is Josh Runnels. I go by J Artiz. Growing up, first main categories was church, singing in church choir, gospel music, and then soul, Motown, that type of oldies feel music. Yeah. At that time, I say the first main group was the Jackson 5, so imitating Michael Jackson when he was in the Jackson 5. Yeah. I got a little bit older and still listening to that same time period, soul music, Dusty's, going into like Curtis Mayfield with Marvin Gaye, and just a number of other groups as well. My family started it. Anything they listened to, I learned just because I didn't have the accessibility to get music yet. But after a while, like middle school, I started seeking my own music and more of that type of music at that time and learning about it. So funny enough, back in like 2003 time period, we had like those illegal like streamers and downloaders, Kazaa, LimeWire. I wasn't like into vinyl because no one around me had vinyl, but my brother bought a lot of CDs, so we would go to a place in Chicago called Coconuts or Best Buy, and we just kind of browse CDs and see what's new, who's new, and then we would look at song titles that sound cool, artists that sound cool, and we'd go download them. First one was definitely Michael Jackson when he was a kid. I think it was because of, natural identity, just identifying with the fact that Michael Jackson was the first young black boy that was singing and was worldly recognized with Motown music. So I imitated him. I wanted to be just like Michael Jackson when he was a kid, and I was a kid, so had a high-pitched voice and I could try to imitate and sound just like him. So getting older, I kind of settled in like kind of Curtis Mayfield and D'Angelo. Those were two really big artists. Stevie Wonder too, but like I realized like the style that I was creating for myself when I became a singer was more Curtis Mayfield, D'Angelo type feel that I would go for. A number of other artists, it goes on for days, but in rap, we had Nas, had Lupe Fiasco, but singing, definitely was those two, Curtis Mayfield, D'Angelo. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone who's creating music now that influences me probably like was influenced by the same artist. So it's like I get a chance to hear everyone's different take and rendition of how they were influenced by these same artists. And so I think I found my own for the most part. But still to this day, like I catch myself sounding like so many different people. Even people say Andre 3000. I never saw myself as someone who listened to Outkast and Andre 3000 as much as like other artists, but I always listened to Outkast growing up too. And now people say, "Oh, you remind me of 3000." Like, I understand. Childhood, West Side of Chicago, definitely influenced a lot of who I am. South Side too, just because we went to church out there. And so, funny enough, the church was in the middle of the hood, Washington Park area, and so you kind of were influenced by that neighborhood as well. And I say the culture of the streets, like was the urban slang, gang culture, everything like that was really important for like how I perceived urban culture to be, and how I started portraying that into rap, and even like kind of identifying what type of singer I would want to be, because I didn't want to be the traditional R&B singer crying over love all the time. So it's like a good mix of like, I'm gonna keep it real even when I'm singing, and I'm gonna try to speak my truth, especially when I'm rapping. But growing up in church, you got the church neighborhood, and you got like the West Side neighborhood, and I went to school in Oak Park, so you got suburbia culture, which I didn't take to that much, but I still lived there, so naturally, subconsciously, it probably influenced me as well. Then even like my dad, he was a wild card with the type of music he would throw in, but it made sense now because these are all the legends. He would throw in Bob Marley, throw in Jimi Hendrix, throw in Curtis Mayfield, throw in like Smokey Robinson, and then throw in Aretha Franklin. It's like, okay, yeah, these are the greats. So I understand. That's the stuff that I was introduced to in my childhood, and now I think it seeks through. James Brown, I'm missing James Brown. He was a big influence on Michael Jackson, so it makes sense how I'm influenced by him as well. I was doing some youth development and art-related education work in Chicago, working with Chicago public school systems, and then I ended up starting my own program and then joined forces with a bigger program that housed the program that I had written out to run. And then a lot of my students were graduating out of the high schools in Chicago and coming to Mizzou, and so at the time I was dating someone who was out here, so now my students like, you got to come out to Mizzou, and I'm like, all right, I'm going out there. And then my girlfriend was out here, so now I'm out here every month. Next thing you know, I get job offers, and next thing you know, I'm working for Mizzou Theater, and now I'm living here. J to the artist. So I went a long time trying to figure out what my name was going to be. And my brother, who was a big influence on me as a recording artist, he was the first person that set up a studio for me to be practicing freestyling, writing songs, recording on a daily basis. He was like, why don't you just pick a name that's just art related, because you be doing all the arts. I used to draw, and I used to be kind of creating collage type stuff and singing, rapping, poetry. He was just like, you hitting up on all the arts, theater. And so I was like, you know what, all right, cool. I thought on it a little bit, and then I started looking at the definition of art, and I was like, okay. So art is interesting when you look deeper into like the older dictionaries. Like the most simplified definition of art was art is. And so I was like, I could just do JARTIS, but I was like, I like the Z because something fancy about the Z. And then I'd be making fun of language too, because coming from the west side of Chicago, you know, you chopped up language. We used to always get frowned upon for not speaking proper English or whatnot. But this one girl was like, "I is feeling good," and I was like, I like that. I'm a pride ourselves in that and show that, you know, we don't got to speak this language as long as we know how to communicate, send messages clearly, and then receive them as well. So like, I just kind of want to put a play on it by putting IZ. Art is the most simplified definition of art. The group I was with, a lot of the musicians that's been influencing me since I've been in Columbia, we decided that future soul was a good genre, a good way of like stating the type of music we do. Definitely the foundation of soul music. And yeah, so I'm just gonna stick with it. Future soul. Soul Collective. It's just a collective of individuals that I brought together. We the only ones out here doing soul music. And if y'all know somebody else, let me know. I don't know. I need to know. But essentially, I needed a band. I needed a band because I wasn't in the band anymore. And so I was like, let me form my own band. I want to be the leader, band leader, etc. But I didn't want them to be called like J Artiz Band. That's kind of whack. So I was like, we was trying to figure out what names to think of. They wasn't coming up with some good selections. I'm like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna be the Soul Collective, and we're gonna kind of like monopolize all of the soul categories out here. So anyone who wants some soul music, they don't have to hire us before they hire anybody else, because we're the first ones leading that for this time period. And so yeah, it's just a number of vocalists, artists, rappers at this point, and then musicians that all come on like a weekly basis to rehearse for shows and just jam out with us. And now we're starting to get into the studios on Saturdays, and we're recording, putting together some original music. That's the Soul Collective. So solo, I get to kind of think about all of the shit that I like to talk on the microphone. I talk a lot of shit on the mic, and I can kind of like just represent myself. But you know, when you're working with the group, you don't always want to misrepresent the group, and so essentially you got to consider the group. And some of the thoughts and things that I would just kind of say when I'm on a solo endeavor, like, you know, it's not always the same from when I'm with the group. But the better thing with the group is that you get to feed off of them. So, you know, music is a conversation, especially live music with instruments. Like if a keyboard player like were to choose certain notes at the end of a song that usually isn't the note, but live he decided to take it there. It's like, oh, what did you just say? By choosing those notes, that note communicates a certain mood or a certain tone. And now I could like pretty much communicate back to that musician. And so like it creates a whole new experience every time if you have musicians who are brave enough to like kind of do that improvisation on like live sets. But a lot of times people don't like to do that. But I'm encouraging folks in our group to do that. So as someone who sings and raps and does poetry, a lot of rappers and they don't know how to perform with the band. And a lot of modern contemporary recording artists, they start in the studio recording. You can easily pay and just get in the studio, get a random beat off YouTube, and, you know, make a song. That's how I started too. But like, I think the next level of musicianship is when like a vocalist and a rapper can learn how to pretty much navigate with the band and other musicians who also have a great contribution to the music experience. And so right now, being a music artist that has a band to perform with is really important. And I think it has me like stand out from a lot of other rappers and a lot of other artists in town who do what we're doing or similar to what we're doing. Working on 2 projects actually. One is like the typical like modern hip hop and R&B studio production style project. It's a short EP. And while I'm also in between recording that, the Soul Collective is creating a project. We're creating songs to go toward a project. And then me as a solo artist with the band backing me, we're in the studio doing live instrument projects as well. So essentially we're trying to like, you know, record the live experiences that you would experience when we're at a live showcase with the band. Yeah. A big goal is to see myself traveling into a lot of cities that need like a little culture shock. Essentially, I want to be able to go perform there with the band, create an experience that probably will be different and unforgettable for a lot of these cities and towns. across the nation, across the world, but also like identifying nonprofits, now identifying youth programs who also need the art and education crossover. And then so next time I come back to that town, we're not just taking their money and performing and getting up out of there. Like I want to be able to set up shop and actually build into that community, whether that's while I'm there or from a distance. Either or is preferred. But I want to see the impact, the shift in culture, and I want to be able to do that through like hip hop and soul, R&B music, a lot of other things too. I definitely want to get back into Chicago more. That's where I started, and I want to come back home with what we got. Do it again there. I want to get into Atlanta. I want to get into New Orleans. I want to get even to the south, like Mississippi, Texas, a lot of states, but cities like it's no like. What I noticed is that we might have something to offer smaller cities rather than bigger cities, and so even out here, like I big ups to Nick Danger, my friend, but what he does, he hits up all of the small cities in Missouri, and now he's like a household name in small cities, and he's found a great niche doing that because a lot of other artists aren't doing that. So I wanna be able to be known really well on the state level here, and then be able to move to other states and do the same thing one step at a time. But like I got Jimi Hendrix dreams. I want to be able to kind of take over Europe or take over like countries overseas where they really could appreciate this type of fusion music that we're creating. And just going back to the other question, like Future Soul is just fusing different genres together. So we also say that it's fusion music.